So, let me just introduce myself. My name is Massimo Giliberti. I know that's a mouthful. Just call me Max. It's easy. So, I grew up in a family business. My dad started his business in the garage, one-person operation, grew it all the way up to 30 people, and I was along with that ride. I had the unique perspective to really see what ends up happening at different intervals of business. You know, when you hit that mark at 5 people or 10 people or even 25 people, there seems to be just the business completely changes at that point. What is constant throughout all that I saw was lean, the concepts of lean. So currently, I'm a lean and cabin vision consulting. They are more or less mutually exclusive, but they are connected in the way that cabin vision very often, with us woodworkers, we use it in our day-to-day operation. We use it in design. We use it to connect to our CNC in our manufacturing. So that's why I do. I'm based out of New York City, so I got a little bit of info right there. So today, we're going to talk about, number 1, what is lean? Number 2, what are some lean tools? Number 3, if you want to actually get started, how do you get started? So just a quick poll here. Show of hands, who knows what lean is? All right, great. Okay, and who's implementing lean right now? All right. Good to know, good to know. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw a really wide presentation here of what is lean all the way and show some lean tools. It's not point to point exactly what you would put out in your factory floor, but it'll give you a grasp of what lean is and hopefully really introduce you to the concepts and want you to learn more. So a little bit about the history. Lean really got its start long before Toyota, but Toyota is known for starting to document the lean process. So post-World War II, they were completely wrecked. Japanese company completely wrecked. What they did to really ramp up their auto production, they didn't have a US released auto car yet. What they did, they actually toured factories. So they actually came here to Ford's plants, and they saw the assembly line. And they loved it. They're like, wow, great. But they did notice one thing. Ford had output, but they didn't have variety. So one of Henry Ford's classic quotes is, any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants as long as it's black. Right? So they started developing this system called the Toyota production system back in the 50s. They introduced their first car in the US, the Toyopet, that guy right back up there, the top one, and it did absolutely miserably. It was expensive, low horsepower, and just for comparison, the car on the bottom, that's what was #1 seller in US at the same year. So they were completely off mark. But what they did understand, using the principles of lean, they really looked at their customer and what they were providing their customer. The next year, they completely revamped operations. They introduced the first Land Cruiser, and it did spectacular. So back in the day, it was very common that cars you would buy a brand new car, and after 2 weeks, it would be in the shop. That's just the level of quality that was in cars back then. Toyota was revolutionary with lean in the fact that they really got their quality down, really, where you bought a Toyota and they were known for reliability because that was never in the shop. And it was so important to their operation that very quickly they went to their own suppliers and took the rule book that they had and said, hey, let's help you get lean yourself. All right, so what is lean here? Definition that I use is focus on customer value, adding work, and, so this is the first part, the seeing, and eliminating and minimizing all else. Again, I'll reiterate that. Focusing on customer value, adding work, and eliminating all else. So it's distinctly separate, and this is where implementations of lean really fall short. The first part is seeing operations, seeing what waste is, seeing what customer value is, really defining and separating the two. Then the next part, once you've identified it, then it becomes easy. We've got a room full of cabinet makers here. You guys are really creative. It's just in the industry, right? So I'm certain that if you guys see it, see the problem, see the waste, see the customer value, and see the waste and separate it, once you identify the problem, you'll be able to get creative with finding solutions. So any of you that might be just in the beginning of learning what Lean is or has heard it, you'll very quickly see there's acronyms more than enough. There's 1,000 different names. Kaizen, continuous improvement. You've got Six Sigma, TPS, like I just mentioned, just in time. You've got also the software side of it, where you've got Scrum, and you've got Agile. It goes on and on and on. And there's thousands of tools, I would say. The main core of it, what Lean is, again, is that focus on customer value and eliminating or minimizing everything else. So what I think the best way to jump into this would be, let's look at a process we all kind of know. And what better than, does anyone know what this thing is? So let's all pretend we've got a piece of wood in our hands, and let's just kind of dive into the process of cutting this piece of wood. So first step, we walk to the machine with a piece of wood that needs to be cut. We remove the piece of wood that's left on the machine. So this is how we found the machine, right here. With all that stuff on it, it's all right. So we remove all the pieces. We determine if what's left on there is waste or not. And we throw it away if it's waste. We put the clamps away. We move that push stick. We walk to the hand broom, which is in the back now. It's all covered, but now we need to get it. And we clean all the channels because, of course, the cut that we have to make needs the miter gauge. We grab the miter gauge that's hanging on the bottom of the saw. We check the saw blade to see if it's right for the correct material, and of course it's not. So we go to get to the right saw blade, and we see if it's dull. And we unplug the saw. We go through this whole process of changing the blade. I'm sure you guys all know, throat plate, blade up, get the saw blade wrenches. One of them is lost, so let's get a piece of wood to jam that blade so we could take that nut off. Right? This is a reality here. We loosen the arbor nut. Remove the nut. Remove the cup washer. It's exhaustive, I know. Remove the blade. Replace with the correct blade. Tighten everything up. Check the alignment. Blade down, throat plate. Put the blade at the right height, angle the blade, move the fence, double check the dimensions. I've seen saw blades where the measuring tape is gone, or you grab that fence and you push it down, and it's swinging left and right 2 inches, right? So you're putting it down, see if you got the right thing. Nope. All right, let's grab my tape measure again, move it around. Plug in the saw. All right, now we got to turn on the dust collector. We walk back there. Turn on the saw, we can make our cut. Turn off our saw, turn off the dust collector. We grab the piece and we go back to our work area. And then we look and there was a chipped edge. All right? Now, what was Lean? Why did I do this whole exercise? The only thing that we got paid for in this whole operation was performing the cut. Everything else is waste. I'm not saying that we can just throw this all away, right? But I am saying once we identify it, once we see it, once we see all our processes like this, then we can jump on the problem. Any Lean implementation, most of them that don't work, have 2 major issues. Number 1, the guy up top doesn't see this. And number 2, all the employees, the people that are doing the work, they don't see this. They don't look at their processes and they don't see where the waste is. They don't see where the customer value-added work is. The customer doesn't care about an arbor nut or you losing that second wrench. They just don't care. All right? So once we've determined, okay, we've got our customer value-adding stuff and we have our stuff that's waste. Waste, so customer value-adding, that's the very top. That's the stuff that we keep. All right. Then the next 2, this is waste. Necessary, but not value-adding. So this is the stuff that we want to try to minimize as much as possible. So if we go back to our Example will be something that we want to minimize here. Maybe finding the extra wrench, right? How can we minimize that? Once we have that question, once we're asking the right question, how do we minimize the way of finding the wrench? Give it a home. Exactly. Maybe putting a hook somewhere. Maybe there's a wall nearby. Maybe underneath. Maybe we could build a cabinet. Once we minimize that, now, if it took us 30 seconds to find a wrench, maybe it'll take us a second, maybe less. Finally, the last one would be non-value adding operations, actions that should be eliminated, such as waiting. I want to jump back on this saw example here. Think about that dust collector, right? We had to walk back and forth the dust collector 2 times. Once to turn it on, once to turn it off. An easy way would be just plumb it right into your saw. Turn on the saw, the dust collector turns on. We just eliminated waste, just like that. But the main thing, again, lean is all about seeing this. If we don't see it, then we can't tackle it. It's all about that focus on value-adding work. All right. Once we've determined waste, and this is how waste kind of hides itself. We've got 8 different types of waste. Defects. Things that just get damaged, right? That chipped piece of wood. It's not only the defect itself, but it's the rework that goes with that defect. And all the people's time and everything that goes along with that. Motion. Walking back and forth, the time it took us to walk to the saw or walking to the dust collector. Waiting. Let's say we're waiting for the saw. Someone else is using it. Transportation. Moving that board to the saw. That's transportation. Now, I'm using this one particular process because everyone knows it. It is really simple, and that's what I was hoping for. Everyone would understand that process. But you can take this idea, this way of looking at it, these special glasses, if you may, and apply that towards all the processes in your operation. Non-utilized talent. You know, it takes time for that guy to walk to the dust collector, but he isn't a cheap employee, right? So he can be doing something that would be getting more money for the company rather than turning on a switch that's across the room. Inventory. Inventory would be, yes, sheet goods that you're buying from elsewhere, but inventory also goes to work in progress. That's all inventory. That's all sitting materials. Overproduction. Let's say we have a molder, for example, and it takes a long time to run that molder. So you know, we'll just throw in a couple extra pieces because we'll need it later. That's overproduction. That's a form of waste. And extra processing. The job is to spec. Why are we doing? Yes, there's always going over and above, but over and above what customers value. If a customer doesn't value it, then it's waste. It's wasted time. It's wasted resources. And this applies to entire business. It's not just production. Production is easy because it's physical. You can see it, like that saw. You're physically moving. Processes require you to move back and forth. But in offices, there's tons of waste, as you all know. In marketing, right? Think about, for example, payroll. That's waste. The customer, that doesn't actually provide value to the customer. Does the customer care how your employees get paid? Do they even care that the employees get paid at all? No, they don't care. So it's a form of waste. So it's something, once you've identified, hey, payroll, this is waste, how do we minimize this as much as possible? Maybe going for a more electronic system. Stop calculating taxes through books or things like that, right? So this is a core differentiator, and I'm going to swing back to Toyota versus Ford. So Ford dealt with this. What they did was, look, it takes time to set up our machines. It takes time to do all this stuff. So we'll just throw tons of work at it. Instead of making 1 car, let's make 300 cars. So if a process would take an hour, but if we're doing 300 cars, it's 300, an hour divided by 300, right? Toyota said, what if we can do this? What if we can pull out the waste? Then we don't have to throw in 300 cars. All right, so Let's work through this. Work in progress. For batch work, for a Ford, it's through the roof, right? They have to do lots and lots of work in progress to bring down all those setup times, to bring down all those waste costs. Lean, it's the complete opposite. Delaying quality control signal. So if you've got these big heaps of work in progress, what ends up happening when something is wrong, there's an extra hole in something, what happens? We don't see it. We don't see it until the next process, but we've got 300 cars or cabinets, it doesn't matter what it is, 300 widgets until we get to see it. Rework costs through the roof as well, right? If we have 300 units and we just discovered an issue, now we have to go and fix 300 units. We have to recut 300 units. And it's not only that, the further into the system, further it into production it is, the more expensive it's going to be, right? Because you have all that labor that's dumped into that inventory. So maybe recutting is not the deal. Maybe we have to go and patch it up. Time to sort. We have 300 units. Now we have to sort them. This goes to this job. This goes to this job. This goes to this job. Lean drops all this, right? You have a manufacturing management system. You need a really big, robust one because you're batching tons of jobs in. So you have to see where this job, what's going on, cutting. It becomes a giant mess. The time per part. For lean, yes, it would be expensive. That's why there's such an insane focus on what is providing customer value and what is waste. If we can really bring down that waste per part, really chop it down, if we can find our wrench like that, then we don't need to have 300 parts processing. So I want to pause here. I have a quick question. When am I ending? In the meanwhile, does anybody have any? Till 4:30?
You need a half an hour? Yes.
Oh, it was just, all right. All right. So I want to pause here because there's two distinct portions of this presentation. One is the focus on seeing the waste, and the second is some lean tools. Okay? The lean tools, I'm going to quickly skim over them because each individual tool I can spend a whole day on. But I want to get you guys just knowing that these things exist and seeing lean in a different way. So quick question, does anybody have any questions on what lean is at its core?
So,
yeah.
On your single piece flow, we've heard about it, we've heard people talk about it, it just does not make sense to us on a single piece. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? How, and is it because of catching defects?
So I'm going to jump on it. That's actually going to be the third slide right after this. Anything about the actual seeing waste, that whole exercise we went through with that table saw. Any questions on that? Does everyone see the value in seeing that? Yeah.
So as owners, we would obviously see the waste in the whole table saw thing, but my employees are paid hourly, and they don't necessarily have the same motivation as I do to get as many parts out the door.
Right.
How do you motivate them to get on board with this process?
So lean is a tool set. The part of showing, giving them the glasses, that takes work. You know, companies do employ me to go and train people, get them to get those glasses. Maybe blow out a process, just like we did. They want to be able to jump into their job and improve it. There are things that bug them, often. There are some people that might just want to do it the way that they want to do it, period, fine. But there are some people that get impassioned. Those are the right kind of people, by the way. That they get impassioned with jumping in on with their job and really just owning it. And saying, hey, you know, I don't know why I have to find this wrench all the time. Or maybe once you show them, hey, look, you're spending 5 minutes looking for a wrench. Do you think there's an easier way? Oh, let's give it a home. Where do you think? Oh, we could throw it underneath the table saw. So, yeah. So it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. But again, that's why I spend so much time on seeing lean, because that is a part of lean that if you're not doing it right, if you see it and your employees don't see it, then we've got a problem. Lean is not going to work no matter what tools you throw at it. But the main hurdle is getting them to see it and the culture that surrounds all of that, if we're enabling that. All right, so let's jump into a couple of tools. Push versus pull. Can I ask for a couple of volunteers? Maybe 3 volunteers? Don't worry. So you can line on up. Brought this rope from home. Maybe one more? All right, so we're going to just... So lean loves metaphors, if you haven't seen already. But, all right, so we're going to just hold that rope. All right, we're just going to hold it, right? So hold it right here in the middle here, okay? So when I pull, right now we're calibrating here. When I pull, just let it go, let it flow. Great. If I pull like this, let it flow. Great. If I pull like this, let it flow. Great. So imagine this rope being your work in progress, and you are cutting. This process here is the cutting process. This is the edge banding process. This is the assembly process. These are all processes that we all know, right? Push versus pull. The main thing here is if we're pushing a process, so this is input, this is raw materials, and this is output. This is delivering to our customers here. Okay, push is, all right, we've got this brand new beam saw. We can stack tons of sheets in it. We want this thing to hum, right? So I'm going to batch my jobs. Work in progress. Okay, this is our work in progress here. So this loop, look how much rope we've got. This is all money that's sitting on your floor. We've got work in progress right in cutting, and we also have it right after. Okay? So really optimized. CNC, we've got a really nice CNC, super fast. We're going to really optimize it. So if we look at it, again, it's a metaphor, right, for your work in progress. Not that I'm saying that anyone here has cash flow issues, but if you did, can you see where cash might be hiding? Right? If you just look at your factory floor, it's sitting around you. Okay? And again, finally, we deliver to customers. Customers just need a little bit at a time. Right? All right. So now we're going to go to the pull system. So the pull system, the way it works is stop optimizing for cutting, stop optimizing for the CNC, and stop optimizing for assembly. What we're going to do, we're going to manufacture exactly what the customer needs. The customer orders 1 job. If it needs 10 jobs, see, it needs 100 jobs. Okay, so we're not optimizing. Our focus is not, hey, let's get cutting 100%. Uh-oh. You're right. So again, it's not focusing, it's accepting the bottleneck because, oh boy, we're blinding everyone now. There you go. All right. So you're actually going to be part of the next slide here. So it's not focusing on the bottleneck. It's specifically focusing on what's going out. Tack time, I'm going to reset this. Tack time is the heartbeat of the operation. So you could say, okay, great, if my customer goes and orders 10 kitchens, I'm not going to be able to do all 10, right? Tack time it's a simple formula. All it is how much time you have available and how much does the customer demand. That's pretty much it. And at that point, you figure out, okay, let's give an example. We have 450 minutes in a day. We needed 9 units that day. That's 50 minutes a unit. So we look at all our processes. We look at cutting. you need to do 50 minutes per unit. Same with CNC, or edge bending, sorry, and assembly. And at that point, every 50 minutes, everything moves. 50 minutes, 50 minutes. That's all that takt time is. It helps calibrate. When you're looking at your operation, you can do that quick formula and say, okay, my operation needs to be doing 10 units a day. And you're able to look at every individual process is this process, is my cutting process optimized for that? If you've got this awesome beam saw that can do hundreds of units per day, then maybe we need to tone it down. Maybe we have to jump on this, right? How can we optimize this particular process or all our processes? Again, just a tool.
Massimo, can I ask you a question before you move on?
Sure.
So, if you guys humor me for a second, hold the rope back up. So Brian, who's the first guy, he's got the beam saw and he's cutting way more parts than we need. So put the loop back in the rope. Okay? So now I've got all this work in process that's sitting there that I can't deal with because Matt can't edge band it and Ken can't assemble it. But let's say that I take Brian now, who's cut all these parts, and move him down and have him help Ken assemble and get rid of that work in process.
Right.
Then I can still use my beam saw to its fullest capacity instead of optimizing it for the flow that I've set in place. And I've increased the amount of product that I can send out because I'm better utilizing my beam saw to its potential, correct?
Let me pose that question to the audience. Does anybody see the waste in that? What would it be?
The customer needs only what he needs for they need for their job, not more than that. So even if you produce more, you still have that extra material and labor at one point in your production.
Okay. So we've got this guy, we've got all this work in progress. This is costing us money, right? Just have this sitting here, right? If let's just say we've got, I don't know, $10,000 on the floor or $1,000, whatever. We put some kind of monetary. Going back to this as being waste, what are we doing with that money? Is it serving its purpose in providing customer value for your company? If we have $10,000 on our floor, we might be able to do something with that $10,000 right then and there. So this is waste just because it's sitting, it's tied up money on your floor. Also,
But if I move Brian over there and I've got him assembling, now I've shipped product and I've turned that into a receivable.
in the meanwhile, this is sitting like this. So even if you do move Brian over, right, this is still going to be like this, and it's slowly going to close up. Right? And again, this is a principle, right? Lean is all about, okay, let's do this, right? This is the leanest operation. But even Toyota, this is, big operations, they've got a little bit of work in progress. In cases where they might need to have that, they have some kind of a funny business process right here that they need to work on. But they don't have tons. The main purpose of this is how big is your loop. Okay, and I'm not saying go out and sell your beam saw. I'm not saying that. That's not very lean either. Right? But we do have to work with what we've got. All right, any other, yeah?
The other thing is that width over there has defect. You just made parts that 2 hours later you find back they're bad. You already produced and took him off his job, so what you really should be doing is speeding up your assembly operation and then pushing, being able to pull more through instead of taking the chance of having a defect in there or width.
Exactly.
Or a customer calls in and says, oops, we have a mistake, we gotta change something. You already cut the boards. Again, you can back charge this, but you just burn your saw blade down, right? You're gonna have to cut 10 boards you don't need.
Right,
The
right.
thing really is, when you have something like this where you can push or pull more in the front, you gotta figure out how this guy in the back. So instead of doing 9, maybe I can sell 12 cabinets, increase your takt time, and get more market share instead of pushing it in there.
The whole point,
That makes sense.
right. Exactly. The whole point of this tool is to shed light on where possible waste can be. That's all it is. What is done with that, that's the next part of it. The action that's taken, that's the next part of it. But number one is, where is the waste? These tools just help in identifying the waste and possible solutions. So single piece flow, you asked about that, right?
Correct.
All right. So single piece flow, we've got this beam saw, and this beam saw is really good. This beam saw is really good at cutting lots of parts at a time, right? And you were edge banding, is that right? And you were assembly. So the whole point you can see here, right? The whole point in single piece flow, it's a tool to try to help even this out. So we've got this guy on the beam saw, and he's cutting, right? And he's cutting 10 pieces at a time. And you're, let's say, cutting 1 piece at a time, right? What do we have to do? Edge banding, right? You're edge banding 1 piece, and you're cutting 10 pieces. So what do we have to do to get this a single piece flow?
As soon as he cuts it, I edge band it?
Maybe we turn down our CNC. Let's say we're not cutting on a beam saw, we're cutting on a CNC. Okay, we have our CNC, edge bander, and assembly all linked together. Maybe we turn down our speed, we cut a sheet, and the same guy might go and switch to our edge bander to edge band it, and then maybe even assemble it. It all depends on what our tack time is. It all depends on how much we're pushing out of our production. Single piece flow is a tool to how to develop your process. So you can see our little boxes up top, right? That's the actual process. And those little yellow bubbles, those are the people. So if we say, hey, this process takes 10 minutes per process, every time we're processing, and this is a 5-minute process, and this is a 10-minute process, right? If I'm putting one part in, this is going to have to go 2 times. So I need to give this process double the labor. If my tack time increases, right, if I'm putting more units out, I might put 2 people here, 4 people here, and 2 people here. That's all single piece flow is constantly moving 1 piece at a time, moving it. So if we have a beam saw and we're throwing a whole sheet on and 10 pieces come off, it's not a single piece, but then is that single piece moving? Is it moving out? Is it getting processed? Or are we having our work in progress here? That's all single pieces. All right? So I'm pretty done with you guys. Round of applause for these guys. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, sure.
So, what you said, like turning the CNC down,
Brian, can you wait a second?
Oh, yeah. The mic.
Why don't you just hop up to the podium there, if you don't mind?
okay, my question is, when you were talking about turning the CNC down, that kind of goes against everything that we do. We have a customer on the other end. I need 10 of these cabinets and I need them next week. And I'm going to go down and turn the CNC down. You know, so it's completely different thinking from what we are used to.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that takes a little bit of time to sink in, you know, how that would operate. So I'm just thinking, how would you apply that to a shop? And, you know, like someone else had mentioned earlier about trying to have your employees implement that.
The first thing is seeing it. You know, if you guys start to see that work in progress as being, you know, everyone here, that work in progress really hits their wallets, their pocketbooks, right? You can see that. These are things that are second nature to you. But your guys, they don't see that, right?
They don't
So-
care.
They don't care? Who's that?
I said that.
Oh.
They don't care. They're getting the same amount of pay whether they do 4 boxes or 6 boxes that day.
Right? But you're holding their paycheck. So make them care.
They get their check on Friday.
Right. Well, make them care. Part of, and I'm right now I'm harping back to Guy here, right? Lean very much is a cultural tool. It's about the culture that you have in your company. if you want lean to actually work right, you need to have the culture really built on lean principles. So if the culture you have in your company if they don't care about seeing that work in progress or seeing waste, if they're totally okay with walking across the shop to get that wrench for the table saw, then you have to reevaluate what we're rewarding, what are we focusing on in our company, right? Very often it's not so much that everyone doesn't care, but it's a few chosen people. And not only that, but we're not necessarily rewarding people for caring. We're rewarding for output. We're rewarding them to be quiet. We're not rewarding them to find bugs and fix them. We're not even very often giving them the time to fix bugs. Clock in, get to work. Not clock in, let's talk about what issues do we have, right? What's the culture that we design? Do we design our culture to see waste, to see what customer value adding work is? Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I get it. I think that's a problem all of us have, is how do we get the employee to care? I mean, that.
Right. It's all about culture. Yep.
Everybody has something, I think Guy said this morning, a paycheck is what most people trick. Something triggers this person to make a living or go to work. And by lean, the culture is that, okay, if I can make your work easier, so you go home at 5 o'clock and you actually can play ball with your kid, you're not beat because you ran across the shop 450 times, that might be the trigger for him to see that waste. And it's literally, when you say this, it's that baby steps. You can't go in there and say, hey, we're going to go lean, here's what you do, we eliminate waste. Find out for each of those jobs, when you stand on that, so if that guy has to bend over 15 times, it might not make you money, but if you can eliminate him to bend 15 times and he goes home and he's actually able to play ball or whatever, chase his kid around the yard, now he has a benefit, and that's what you need to. Can anybody hear me? This is not working right. Hello, 1, 2, 3, speaking. But the ticket really is that you need to look at each station, at each employee, and again, you find the ones, the easy, the low-hanging fruit. On the cancer, like Guy said this morning, the tough part, and you need people, but hey, if he's not on lean board, he's gonna do you more damage than, and it's a tough thing. Your supervisors and you need to know how do each individual has that trigger point, find that, and get them on board. You gotta train them, you gotta make them understand. Okay, your paycheck hasn't changed by the end of the week, but guess what? The company's making more money, you have a more secure job, and you go home not beat to death because you're doing the walking, wasting motion.
Right.
But can I?
Yeah, go ahead
add
if
to
you
that
want to.
too. In our shop, my wife and I were both college athletes, and we've built our company on the athletic principle that your team is only as strong as your weakest link. That combined with, it's a family that we've got. And it is a culture that you've talked about, that if you don't instill in that culture the work ethic that it takes to build a successful company, you're going to have those people that don't care. Combine that with a third variable that we've implemented 2 years, a little over 2 years ago, was profit sharing based on the book Great Game of Business. So we established where it's open book management. We share all of our financials with all of I've got 4 employees up here. You can ask any of them about it privately. I don't care. They'll tell you the whole story behind it. But you give them a financial incentive that their paycheck is based on our profitability, and you share the numbers with them. And I've just got good at it. I used to do it just once a quarter. I'm doing it now once a month, striving to do it once a week, post numbers on gross sales and profitability, and showing them the areas in the cost of goods sold that they can affect, rework, ordering materials. That's where you get the buy-in. And that's why I have these guys here, is to train them and to be leaders. Like my wife and I have come to these conferences all the time, and you go back all excited and gung-ho to share everything, and they're looking at you like this. Huh? So it really has, please talk to them and ask them questions about it. Ask me questions on how you guys can set up a profit sharing system in your company, but it's huge. I think it's been very impactful for them.
So again, it is all about implementing that culture, right? It's all about implementing that culture of, can we see it? Do we care to see it? And if the company that you have running if you might not directly be showing people, hey, it's okay not to care. If that's the company that we have, then no one's going to care. If you're the only one caring, you're the only one going nuts, then, hey, look at the clown. He's running around again. Or she's running around again, right? So it is very much about a culture thing. And part of the culture is seeing lean. So another tool, 0 defects. So if we eliminate all our work in progress, then we can stop the line if we find something wrong. And when I mean stop the line, I really mean stop the line. This is a picture of an auto. I think this is Toyota, not 1,000% sure. But they have the same exact system where if they find a defect anywhere on the line, they pull this lever. The first thing that happens is somebody that's supervising the area will run over and check if it's actually an issue, a defect. If it is indeed a defect, they shut down the entire line. Then everyone's focused on getting that thing resolved again. So they might have to go 1 process back, 3 processes back, 10, wherever the defect originated from. They fix it, so not a single more piece of inventory gets produced until the defect is done. Really chopping waste at the very bottom, right? Another quick tool. Again, I'm going real quick here. But 5S, this is about jumping on your workstations and getting them organized, cleaned up, where we're really chopping waste. First part in 5S is a cycle that continues not constantly. We're going to get rid of unnecessary items and keep all the necessary ones. We're going to set in order the things that are necessary. How frequently do we use all these things? If out of the things that we do have, if we use a hammer every single day or every hour in the day, that should be front and center. If, let's say, we have a jigsaw and we use that every week, that should be further away from us. Setting up a system, setting up a workbench where we have our hammer front and center and our jigsaw further away. Shine, physically clean it. Get that ½ inch of dust that's on top out. Why is this important? Because if we're looking for that wrench, for that table saw that's an 1/8 inch thick, 1/4 inch thick, right? And it's sitting on top of something, but it's buried over dust, how are we going to find it? Keeping stuff clean is a really important thing so we can actually find stuff that's missing. We can see when something's out of order. Standardize. Have a place for the wrench, right? Make a board, put a screw in the board, hang the wrench, and then outline the wrench. So we know if the wrench is not there, what's supposed to be there? A wrench. That's not just a screw in a board. And then finally, making sure that we're keeping on our standards, making sure that when the wrench is missing, that we're holding up. Where's that wrench? Talking about it. Why don't we need it? If somebody says, hey, we don't need it anymore, okay, so why do we still have that there? Sustaining this. This is a quick example here, before and after. Utter chaos. If, let's say, I need a pair of pliers, where are those pliers? I don't know. And then after you see something like it's called a shadow board, what I was just talking about the outline. If I pulled off any tool, I'd see a shadow. Kanban. We all, let's say in assembly, we have a set of screws that we need, 1 1/4 screws. When we run out, we see our guy walking across the shop to go and fill the box of 1 1/4 screws, right? Kanban is an inventory control system. It's set up in 2 bins. You can see 1, 2, right? So they're working, they're always pulling out of that first bin. When they're out, they take the empty bin out. The second bin filled with 1 1/4 screws slides forward. They take the empty bin and they throw it into a receptacle that someone that deals with filling inventory deals with when they fill inventory. So when they fill inventory, they walk the shop floor and they get all their bins to fill inventory and they fill inventory. Very clean system. You don't have unutilized labor. No one's walking across the shop. They have their material. They can keep the line going. What we did in the beginning, a value stream map. For you guys, it was self-explanatory, right? But for an employee, they don't see it. They don't see how certain part is waste and how others is not. So doing something like this and labeling and taking the time and actually timing it. So we could say, hey, This part that we needed to cut took 10 minutes, but it's a 30-second operation. Why did it take us 10 minutes? So they can see it. And now we have the definition of the problem. Let's ask our employees, hey, how can we fix this problem? The first answer is, hey, maybe we can put a screw on the wall, put a wrench up. Hey, table saw, the actual blade is dull. Okay, what can we do about this? Maybe we can have a Kanban system with our table saw blades, right? We grab our sharp blade. When it's dull, we put it into a sharpening, and we have a second one there. And this is how we do it, right? We really touched on it, and you guys are really energetic on how do we do this? How do we do this, right? It is all about the culture and asking that question, where is the customer value? Having your employees picking that out, because once they do pick it out, now we have a defined problem. We know what we can tackle, right? And don't get overwhelmed. I know if you guys jumped out on the floor and had to implement it, you would just be nonstop implementing. But it's not for you guys to be implementing. It's for the guys on the floor that are actually doing the value-adding work to implement. It's for them to see it, because they're doing the work. So all we need is tiny little changes, tiny little changes, because they start to compound. If we do 30 minutes today, or even 10 minutes today, and 10 minutes tomorrow, they compound very, very quickly. Managers, and again, right now I'm harping back to what Guy said here, right? Managers, what they are, they're coaches. That's what we have to be. If we really want lean to actually roll through our shop, we need to be coaches. We need to get our employees knowing what this stuff is, how to see it. Are we rewarding just output? Are we rewarding, and these are maybe very implicit things, are we rewarding people just staying quiet? What are we measuring? Are we measuring just output? Are we measuring, hey, what changes have we made? Maybe taking a picture, having a system where your employees can take a picture of an improvement they've made, and then having a meeting where they're actually presenting what they did. So they have, number one, a lot of pride in what they do. Number two, you're really rewarding them. You're letting them shine in front of all their colleagues. Are we doing postmortems? Are we asking the question, what went wrong? Are we looking at our job and just simply stopping for 5 minutes and asking everyone that was involved, hey, what went wrong? Are we looking for the answer of, hey, when I went to change the table saw blade, it was dull. All right, we got something now. Now we can jump on this. It's all about communication. This whole slide is all about culture. All right, what's next here? So hopefully it's clear what lean is, and I very quickly touched some lean tools. So where would you start at this point would be jumping, talking to your employees, or if you're not convinced yet, really reading up on what some more lean tools are. I would recommend the Toyota Way, just because you could see, hey, these are the guys that did it at the very beginning. There are the same exact books that Guy put up, The Goal, The Toyota Way. These are really good books. And books don't sometimes do the trick, you know. Jump onto YouTube. There are thousands of videos on YouTube. Just get some info. Have your employees jump in on it. All right, so again, I'm an independent consultant. I get involved just about anywhere in a lean implementation, from simple coaching, answering questions, maybe a phone call here or there, to a full-blown lean implementation. So, any other questions? Yeah.
How do you scale lean down to, say, a one-man shop instead of a Toyota manufacturing plant?
Yeah. So it's all about, again, once we identify the waste. For a one-man shop, there's plenty of waste that goes around. It's identifying it and seeing what can we do. Let's just say we have a tiny little shop and we use the same bench for just about everything, right? But there's different modes that that bench uses, right? So maybe having a bench that each side serves a different purpose. So okay, this is milling, this is finishing, and we have all our tools ready there. So it's all about finding where the waste is, because once you've determined exactly what waste is, if let's say it's that table saw, finding that wrench, you can quickly figure out what a solution might be to that. So it's all about really identifying it, because then at that point you can solve the problem. I know I'm being vague because every operation is very, very different, and waste comes in many different forms. But that would be it.
I mean, I can see the waste easily, but solving it does not come as easy as you're suggesting.
So, yeah, something like this, these conventions really do help. The factory tour actually helps because not so much that you see other people doing implementations, but you can easily pick out waste in their operation, right? And it gets the gears going. It's like, okay, I would have done it this way, but then applying that to your own shop. I know it's not easy, but sometimes you might have to have a minimum level of waste. And it's constantly, the jobs always change, right? You might have a whole big flood, maybe the past 3 years you've been doing kitchen cabinets, right? Then all of a sudden you start seeing bedroom furniture. Your past setup might not be equipped for your current setup. So again, it's constantly looking at, okay, this is waste and it bugs me. How can I get this thing that bugs me out of my way? You know, how can I reduce that extra step? That's all it is.
And sometimes it takes an outside person to see that too. Sometimes you're just so ingrained in your work environment that you can't see it. And that's where Guy kind of talked about being the new guy, being the unicorn, because he's not tainted by what has been done for so long that you get a new guy coming in. He actually, well, why do you do it that way?
Right.
And so it might take a friend or another coworker. I invite anybody here to my shop to check it out. I think I've got a couple board members that are going to come take a look at my shop. I want them to pick my shop apart. I want them to tell me, why do you do it that way? So that it improves us, it sharpens us.
So the question alone of, hey, what is that and why do we do this? You have a one-person shop. Okay, it's a little bit tough. When you have a larger shop, what I also recommend is pull people from completely unrelated areas to just be in on a Kaizen event or an event of improvement, right? Hey, let's pull in a guy from accounting to the shop, to this floor, to finishing or to milling or whatever it is. And his questions, hey, you cut this and then you do, his questions actually force you to go through the cycle of, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And then once you've gone through that, then we can actually pull it apart. So, hope that helps. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I think that there's an Old Testament saying, or a reading in the Old Testament. It says, "As iron